Welcome to A Course in Miracles, where you'll discover health and well-being through inner peace. Your host is Eloisa Ramos, EFT master and author of Beyond Self-esteem, Discovering Your Boundless Self-Worth. Using EFT, the Ramos clearing technique, and the principles of A Course in Miracles, you'll learn how to open your mind to healing and to all that is inherently yours: deep fulfillment, vitality, joy, and inner peace.
Welcome to today's program. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and today we are exploring questions of self-esteem and self-worth. Why does our self-esteem and worth seem to fluctuate? What is the source that establishes our value and esteem? What is self-esteem and self-worth anyway? Let's start with the definition of self-esteem from the American Heritage Dictionary. It says self-esteem is pride in oneself. That seems simple enough. From this definition, it appears that we can have self-esteem anytime we take pride in anything we consider to be ourself. So we can take pride in our work, our body, our intelligence, our financial standing, our educational accomplishments, what we own, our looks, our country, our gender, the sports team we follow, the car we drive, the ideas we have, our hopes and dreams, etc. But we must meet the two requirements of the definition to have self-esteem. The first one was pride, and the second one was that we consider the particular activity or object or idea, etc., that we take pride in to be ourself. But how do we make something ourself? Well, we can identify with it so that we make it a part of us and personal, or we can invest a part of our will to have it turn out in a particular way, and so we become attached or invested in having things a certain way. Take a sports team, for example. The San Francisco Golden State Warriors won the basketball championship last year and are doing quite well this year too. The team can easily be a source of pride for us in California or anywhere else for that matter. They have made great accomplishments by setting new records in basketball. So we can identify with them, make them a part of us, so that when they win, it feels like we win. It feels personal. We can invest our hopes in their success and become very attached to having them succeed for us. The victory would not just be theirs. We would savor in that victory and feel a part of it. We would feel proud. All this is fine. However, we all know that in reality, we are not the sports team we follow. In truth, we cannot be our activities, our accomplishments, our work, the objects we possess and value, nor our specific points of view, ideas, nor interests, nor likes. We cannot be our expectations, our plans, or our dreams because they all belong to us. And what belongs to us cannot be us. So even though we can make them seem a part of us, we don't actually change ourselves and magically turn into whatever we identify with. But we can believe we are them and give ourselves the feelings associated with them. Those feelings give us an experience, but do not have power to change what we are in reality. For this reason, pride and the self-esteem that comes from it is an illusory thing. It seems to have reality in some circumstances, but not in others, depending on what we identify and invest ourselves in. For example, we can identify with our brand new car and take pride in driving it. But as time passes, newer models come out, and ours is no longer the top of the line. So what happens to our pride? I can work to clean up my front yard and pull up all the weeds so I can feel proud of how it looks when I'm done, or so others visiting me will see how beautiful my yard looks and can compliment my work and give me approval, and this can be a source of pride. Of course, I can also feel discouraged if no one notices and can feel like I did all that work and got no reward or value for it, since no one noticed and did not give me recognition for the work well done. Pride says there is value we can claim for ourselves. Once we claim it, we can give our self-esteem because we can see it has value, whereas before we were not able to see its value. What this says is that we do not recognize that our self has value to begin with, and so we conclude we must do something to give it value. Because we perceive ourself without value and don't question this perception, we believe it is the truth. However, as we have discussed in our previous program titled, Are We the Authors of Reality and Life? Do we create ourselves? It is not possible to see the truth of ourself with perception, since our true self, being spirit, has no image to be perceived. The problem we have with self-esteem is that it depends on pride. And because pride comes from perception, which relies on judgment, comparison, and interpretation, it will fluctuate. I can take pride in my work if it is appreciated and judged excellent. But what if others can't quite see how excellent it is? Or what if my work is not exactly to my liking? I can even take pride in not working if I believe that those that don't work have a higher status and more value than those that have to work. I can also feel that having a girlfriend or a boyfriend gives me status and value. But what happens when they leave me? I can feel proud of how my body looks, but with time, the sagging skin and wrinkles appear, and then the pride can turn to shame as I compare myself to other younger bodies. Pride depends on judgment because we have to evaluate ourselves in comparison to others to perceive superiority or inferiority, since superiority has more value than inferiority. In addition, the self we think we are evaluating is also perception-based, and so is not our true self. When our mind identifies and attaches to something, making it personal property or territory, it feels like our identity meshes with it and we join. We then appear to be a self-made image that is what we think or believe we are. This gives a sense that we have self-created ourself. However, thinking and believing we made ourself into something else does not create a true self. What our mind is doing is making or giving form to an opinion, an image, or a way of perceiving ourself based on what we think we are. It's based on judgment. The image represents only what we want to believe we are. This is not the same as what we are, which is the true self and not self-created. The true self, which is spirit, has already been created in truth. The true self, or the Christ, as A Course in Miracles calls it, represents divine creation as a whole, and so is the one Son of God, the Creator. Since there is no separation in truth, our true self is not an individual spirit, but one in spirit with all of creation. We could not be forming images or opinions of ourselves with our mind if we were not already created and creative. This is why we do not need to create ourselves into anything. The fact that we are life and life is spirit is a given. The self-image, on the other hand, is like a mask we wear over our true self to hide it. We can then pretend to be something we are not. Believing we are the self-made image we made allows us to perceive others as self-made images that are separate from one another. We are not perceiving our true self, but just looking at the masks we wear. Nevertheless, the self-image is quite potent and impresses information on our ego mind and the other ego minds, much like the hot iron that ranchers use to brand their cattle to claim ownership. The self-image makes what it has identified with, personal property or territory, of great value, and so we will defend and protect that identity. Any perceived invasion, attack, or offense to our self-image identity will be taken as personal and treated such. Here's an example. I worked with a client, and she would get very upset because her friends would copy personal things, like the clothes she wore, or buy the same furniture she owned. She took pride in not following the crowd and building what she termed her unique self. The expression of her likes and personal taste was what she believed she was. This gave her value, and in her mind self-created herself. When her friends copied her, it felt like a personal attack, and she said it was taking away who she was, meaning her unique self-creation lost value. So she got angry and frustrated with her friends because she needed to protect and defend the value of her self-creation, of her self-image. Would it ever occur to us to defend or protect anything that is false or unreal? No. So, the defending and protecting itself legitimizes that the self-image is the real and true self, when it is not. This is how we imprint ideas that are false into our mind to give ourselves value, but we have to believe they are true and real. They remain, however, misperceptions of our true self, though they have power over our mind precisely because our mind is creative, our true self is creative, and our beliefs are powerful. The upset, which is defending and protecting the false self, keeps the illusion of the false image going. Let's keep in mind, however, that the power of our belief in the self-image we make has no effect at the spiritual level where our true self resides, and so cannot change how we were created in truth. We have the freedom to believe we are a body, an ego, a separate will, or any variation of those self-images. But the truth remains the truth. The true self remains unaffected by perception because it is not an image made by perception. But that also means it cannot be perceived. What God created in truth, the true self, can only be known or recognized. The true self has inherent worth, which does not suffer from the fluctuations of perception precisely because it is not made by perception. A Course in Miracles text, page 54 says, quote, "Your worth is established by God. As long as you dispute this, everything you do will be fearful, particularly any situation that lends itself to the belief in superiority and inferiority. Again, nothing you do or think or wish or make is necessary to establish your worth. This point is not debatable except in delusions." Unquote. Our worth is established by the creator of all life, we call God. If we can accept this idea, we can begin to let go of the problems with self-esteem and self-worth. We would not need to earn or prove our worth or work to get self-esteem, since our value is inherent in our creation. Life, creation, what we are, is meaningful in and of itself, because it represents divine truth and shares in the creative power of its source. If we deny our true self as spirit and as creation of the one source of all creation, we will have to believe we created ourselves, or would have to believe we lack existence, which is difficult to do, but can be believed. We would then need to establish our worth for the self we believe we created in order to give it self-esteem, since value is not inherent in the self-made image. Anything we do will be fearful then, because without the establishment of inherent value, there can be no certainty about our value, since our worth is left to judgment to evaluate, compare, and decide what is superior and of higher value, and so worthy of pride. Pride and superiority are only one side of a double-edged sword. The other edge is shame and inferiority. If we base our worth and value on perception and judgment, it will fluctuate as circumstances change. It may be great to feel pride and believe we are superior to others, but when those circumstances change and we feel the loss, feelings of shame and inferiority surface, and those emotions can be quite unbearable. So much so that depression can follow. Self-esteem can have no certainty, and so our ego will be doubtful about its worth and value. The ego is the self we made to believe we are separate from the one source of all creation. It is not real in truth, but has much reality to our mind that made it. The ego is desperate to establish its value precisely because it doubts it and cannot have certainty, since it perceives and does not know. Page 54 of the text says, quote, "The ego tries to exploit all situations into forms of praise for itself in order to overcome its doubts. It will remain doubtful as long as you believe in its existence. You, who made it, cannot trust it, because in your right mind you realize it is not real. The only sane solution is not to try to change reality, which stands unchanged beyond the reach of your ego, but within easy reach of spirit, unquote. The harder we try to build our self-esteem and worth, the more we are supporting our belief that the self-made image or ego is real. When we are identified with a self-image, we are perceiving reality to say we are lacking and having no value or self-worth. This perception is false since it is not reflecting spiritual truth, which is whole and perfect without lack nor limitation. But since we believe it, it has a great deal of reality in our mind alone. A Course in Miracles offers us a solution to the ego doubts of self-worth by telling us the sane solution is to not try to change reality. This is the opposite of what we usually try to do when we perceive we lack value. We try to find ways to build it up. But it tells us this because we are misperceiving reality. Reality in truth stands unchanged beyond the reach of ego because it stands at the spiritual level. So we must practice allowing reality to be and not try to change it. It is a practice that needs to be done persistently, since what we have been doing is trying to change reality, which we have misperceived. This is fearful because we have been believing that the misperceived reality, which says we lack value and says we are inferior, is true. So, we defend our ego self and its doubts of value by trying to change the reality we have misperceived. The point is, our mind will not be able to see that the ego's doubts of value are not true until we stop trying to change the false reality that those doubts are manifesting for us in our experiences. If we trust that only the truth is true and that everyone's self-worth is inherent, unquestionable, and without doubt, we can be accepting, allowing, or just okay with the circumstances and situations where our value seems to be lacking or is being challenged. It makes forgiveness and letting go of our judgments easier. I really like the setup statement in EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, because it reinforces this point. We start with the negative emotion or issue and put it in these words. Even though I have this, and you fill in the blank, I deeply and completely accept myself. For example, you could say, even though I feel my value or worth was challenged because my child dared to speak rudely to me, I deeply and completely accept myself. So what we're doing is taking the reality that is experienced from the point of view of our ego mind, that is feeling devalued because it has doubts about its worth, and we are saying in the setup statement, I can allow that feeling of devaluation to be and not judge it or react to it. I can still accept myself with what appears to be a bad thing. I can allow myself to just feel it and let that feeling be without needing to change it or defend myself from it. With the practice of not trying to change reality, the blows to our ego's value lose their power to affect us because we are withdrawing our belief from them and by not reacting or defending against them. This practice is one way to unlearn what we have taught ourselves and let go of the belief in what is false. We open our mind to the light of truth within for correction, when we not try to change the reality that we are misperceiving. Page 53 says, quote, "Spirit need not be taught, but the ego must be. Learning is ultimately perceived as frightening because it leads to the relinquishment, not the destruction of the ego to the light of spirit. When I remind you of your true creation, your ego cannot but respond with fear." Unquote. Learning implies changing our thinking and letting go of believing in the false thoughts of the ego thought system of lack and limitation. It means the letting go of believing that the ego is real. The ego is the belief in division or separation. Withdrawing our belief in this false thought is very frightening to the ego. From the ego perspective, it is death and destruction. But since the ego is illusion, how can it die or be destroyed? It already is nothing real. What the mind relinquishes is the belief in it, which then clears our perception to see it is not real. Recognizing this truth, the mind can serve spirit. Page 54 says, quote, "When you are afraid, be still and know that God is real, and you are His beloved Son, in whom He is well pleased. Do not let your ego dispute this, because the ego cannot know what is as far beyond its reach as you are." Unquote. Our worth cannot be established by a self-image, which is a reflection of light. We are created and share in unbounded, infinite value, because we are one in the light of creation itself. This is our reality, and true perception, which comes with the light of truth, can show us that. God is real, and we can know this when we recognize our true self, His beloved Son, in whom He is well pleased. Any doubt or dispute by our ego thoughts is pointless, because the ego cannot know our true self that resides in truth. So when we are afraid, we need to be still to hear the voice for God that tells us the truth. God is real, so that the illusion of fear may clear in its light. This concludes our program for today on self-esteem and self-worth. If you would like to explore this topic more in depth, please visit my website, healingwitheft.com, or order my book, Beyond Self-Esteem, Discovering Your Boundless Self-Worth. Thank you, and blessings to everyone.
For more information about EFT, muscle testing, working with Eloisa, and to download a free version of the Ramos clearing technique, visit www.healingwitheft.com.